7 surface-to-air missiles. 1 F-105 Thunderchief, altitude 200. The flight recorder captured 11 minutes of continuous evasion. Air Force analysts classified it for 32 years, not because of what Captain John Boyd saw, but because of what he did. The maneuver violated every doctrine in the tactical manual. It worked. December 2nd, 1967, 14:47 hours local time. Route Package 6, the most heavily defended airspace in human history. Captain John Robert Boyd, call sign Falcon 3, flying solo escort for a photo reconnaissance mission over the Hanoi railyards. Mission parameters: maintain 420 knots, stay below radar coverage, protect the RF-4C camera bird. The SA-2 Guideline missile had a 99-meter blast radius. Boyd's F-105 was just under 20 meters long. 7 missiles launched in sequence. They created overlapping blast zones. According to 1967 probability calculations, 0% survival. This account stayed buried in Strategic Air Command archives until 1999. Here's why. This declassified engagement provides insight into the tactical evolution of electronic warfare and Wild Weasel doctrine during Operation Rolling Thunder. Understanding these close-quarters SAM evasions preserves the operational reality faced by strike pilots over North Vietnam. It demonstrates how individual innovation contributed to revised Air Force tactics. Military academies study this case as an example of kinetic problem-solving under sustained missile engagement. To understand how Boyd survived what analysts called the Christmas tree, 7 simultaneous tracking radars painting one aircraft, we need to go back to Erie, Pennsylvania, 1935. John Robert Boyd, born January 23, 1935. Erie, Pennsylvania. Population, 116,000. Father worked the railroad yards. Mother managed a boarding house during the Depression. 3 brothers. Working-class Catholic family where military service meant economic mobility. Boyd's motivation wasn't patriotic abstraction. It was practical physics. He told his high school guidance counselor in 1952, "I want to understand how things move through air. Not fly, understand." He enlisted in the Air Force at 17 through the Aviation Cadet Program. Basic flight training, Bartow Air Base, Florida, 1953. Advanced training, Williams Air Force Base, Arizona, 1954. Graduated 23rd in a class of 187. Not top, but instructors noted something specific in his file. Cadet Boyd demonstrates unusual capacity for 3-dimensional spatial calculation during high-G maneuvers. He accumulated 847 flight hours before Vietnam. Not exceptional, but Boyd approached flying like mathematics. He documented aircraft performance parameters in personal notebooks, not because regulations required it, but because he wanted to know exactly what his machine could do at every combination of speed, altitude, and loading. F-105 Thunderchief checkout. Nellis Air Force Base, 1965. The Thud, as pilots called it, 50,000 pounds of aircraft built around a single J-75 engine, producing 26,500 pounds of thrust with afterburner. It carried more ordnance than a World War II B-17. It turned like a freight train. Boyd respected the Thunderchief's limitations. Maximum speed at sea level, 837 miles per hour, faster than most fighters at low altitude. But turn radius at 500 feet and 420 knots, nearly 2 miles. The aircraft lost speed in sustained turns. Pilots who tried to dogfight in a Thud didn't come back. Personal stakes. December 1967. Wife Margaret, married 4 years. Son Michael, age 2. Daughter Jennifer, 3 months old. They lived in base housing at Korat Royal Thai Air Force Base, Thailand. Boyd had flown 87 combat missions over North Vietnam. He needed 100 for rotation home. 13 missions remained. He wrote letters home describing the Thud in technical terms Margaret didn't fully understand, but one phrase repeated: "It brings you back if you respect what it can't do." Mission briefing. December 2nd, 1967, 0630 hours. Korat RTAFB, Thailand. Primary objective, photo reconnaissance of Hanoi rail yard complex. Secondary, suppress SA-2 sites along ingress route. Weather: scattered clouds at 8,000 feet, visibility 10 miles. Wind 15 knots from the northeast. Surface temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Route Package 6, the area surrounding Hanoi and Haiphong, contained more anti-aircraft artillery than defended Berlin in 1945. By December 1967, North Vietnamese air defense forces had deployed over 200 SA-2 Guideline surface-to-air missile sites in overlapping engagement zones. Boyd knew the specifications. 425-pound warhead. Speed, Mach 3.5, roughly 2,400 miles per hour at altitude. The guidance system needed continuous radar tracking from ground controllers, but below 1,500 feet, the missile couldn't maneuver effectively. The radar became cluttered with ground returns. And he knew something else. Something he'd written in his notebook after his 34th mission. SAM operators fire in salvos. They're not trying to hit you with one missile. They're trying to force you into the engagement envelope of the next one. The F-105D Thunderchief Boyd flew that morning. Tail number 610217. Carried M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon, 1,029 rounds. 2 AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles for air-to-air defense. ALQ-87 radar warning receiver, QRC-160 jamming pod, an experimental electronic countermeasure. Maximum combat weight 52,500 pounds. Fuel 1,160 gallons internal, plus 2 450-gallon wing tanks. Combat radius 420 nautical miles with external stores. Boyd calculated his fuel carefully. Korat to target 320 nautical miles. At 420 knots cruise, 45 minutes each way. Reserve for combat maneuvering, 20 minutes. Reserve for divert airfield, 15 minutes. Total mission time budget, 125 minutes. Every minute of evasive maneuvering tripled fuel consumption. The math was simple and unforgiving. The mission formation: Python 1, lead strike package, 4 F-105s with cluster bombs. Python 2, 4 F-105s with iron bombs. Weasel 1, 2 F-105F Wild Weasels for SAM suppression. Falcon 3, Boyd, solo escort. Laredo 1, RF-4C Phantom, the reconnaissance bird, the whole reason for the mission. Boyd's role: fly defensive trail position, 2,000 feet behind and 500 feet below the RF-4C. If SAMs launched, draw tracking radars away from the photo bird. The reconnaissance aircraft carried no weapons, no jamming equipment, just cameras worth more than the airplane. Simple mission parameters: get the RF-4C in, get the pictures, get everyone out. But intelligence reports indicated increased SAM activity around Hanoi. 7th Air Force estimated 15 to 20 active SA-2 sites within range of the target area. Radar warning receivers would light up like Christmas trees, hence the nickname for Route Package 6, the Christmas Tree Route. Boyd checked his G-suit connections. Oxygen flow, normal. Ejection seat, armed. Canopy, locked. Engine instruments, green. He made one personal calculation, not in any checklist. If the RF-4C takes hits, how low can I go and still have enough airspeed to climb out? The answer: 200 feet, absolute minimum. Below that, ground effect becomes unpredictable. Recovery time exceeds margin of error. He taxied to runway 06. Loaded weight, 48,200 pounds. Outside air temperature, 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Density altitude, 2,400 feet. Takeoff roll, 5,800 feet. Rotation speed, 195 knots. Climb rate, 4,500 feet per minute initially, decreasing as altitude increased. Formation join-up at 12,000 feet. Course, 015 degrees. Time, 1355 hours. They descended to 500 feet, crossing into North Vietnamese airspace. Radar coverage at that altitude intermittent, but SAM operators didn't need continuous radar. They needed 3 seconds of tracking to launch. 1447 hours, 47 nautical miles southeast of Hanoi. Boyd's ALQ-87 radar warning receiver chirped. Single-tone, fan song acquisition radar, the targeting system for SA-2 sites. Bearing 340 degrees northwest. The RF-4C was 2 minutes from initial photo point. Falcon 3, Python lead, say status. Boyd checked the receiver scope. 1 radar, not painting him continuously. Search mode, not tracking. Falcon 3, single acquisition, not locked. The receiver chirped again. Different tone. Second radar, bearing 025 degrees, northeast. Then a third, bearing 310 degrees. 3 fan-song radars, triangulating the formation. Standard North Vietnamese tactic, multiple sites coordinating to eliminate escape routes. Laredo 1 is starting camera run, 30 seconds. Boyd's job? Stay between the radars and the photo bird. He adjusted position, placing his aircraft's jamming pod between the RF-4C and the northwest radar site. The receiver tone changed. Sharp, urgent warble. Track mode. Lock. Falcon 3 locked northwest. He saw it 2 seconds later. White smoke trail, climbing vertically from the ground 8 miles away. SA-2 Guideline, boosting toward altitude on a column of flame. Standard evasion, brake toward the missile, force it to maneuver, bleed its energy. Boyd broke right, pulling 4 Gs. The Thud's wing tanks groaned. Airspeed 440 knots, altitude 500 feet. The missile tracked. Its guidance system had him. Time to impact, 14 seconds. He armed the chaff dispenser, bundles of aluminum strips that created false radar returns. Chaff release. The receiver tone wavered but didn't break. The missile adjusted. 9 seconds. He pulled harder. 6 Gs. Vision narrowed. The G-suit squeezed his legs and abdomen, forcing blood to his brain. Airspeed bled to 380 knots. The Thud shuddered, approaching structural limits for this configuration. The missile crossed behind him, missing by 400 feet. Its proximity fuse detonated. Shrapnel peppered his right wing tank. Fuel streamed. The aircraft bucked. Control stick vibrated. He felt the impact through the airframe before he saw the warning light. Fuel press RT low. Falcon 3 taking hits, continuing. But the receiver didn't stop warbling. Second missile launch, same site. They'd fired a salvo, this one tracking cleaner. Closure rate, 2,000 miles per hour combined. Boyd didn't brake, not yet. He watched the smoke trail, calculated intercept angle, waited. 3 seconds from impact, he unloaded, pushed the stick forward abruptly, creating negative G, dropping the aircraft toward the ground. Altitude, 300 feet. The missile couldn't follow the negative G maneuver. It streaked overhead, missing by 200 feet, and impacted the ground half a mile ahead. Black smoke mushroomed. He pulled back to level flight. Altitude, 180 feet. Airspeed, 340 knots, slower than doctrine allowed over defended territory. The receiver showed 5 radars now, all tracking. Laredo 1, cameras rolling, 10 seconds. Boyd checked fuel. Right tank empty from battle damage. Left tank 640 gallons. 30 minutes at current consumption. But evasive maneuvering tripled fuel flow. The receiver screamed. New tone. Multiple launches. He counted the smoke trails visually. 3 missiles. Different sites. Coordinated salvo designed to eliminate escape angles. What happened next appears in the declassified mission report as pilot executed unspecified evasive maneuver resulting in successful missile avoidance. The flight recorder data wasn't analyzed until 1999. Tactical analysts still debate whether Boyd's next decision was calculated or instinctive. Standard doctrine for multiple SAM engagement: climb to altitude, use speed and maneuverability in 3 dimensions, get above the missile's effective maneuvering envelope. Boyd descended. Altitude, 150 feet, then 100 feet, then 80 feet. Airspeed, 480 knots, 552 miles per hour at 80 feet above North Vietnamese rice paddies. The Thud wasn't designed for this. Control responses at high speed and low altitude became hypersensitive. A 1-degree bank error at 80 feet meant ground collision. Wind shear from the terrain could flip the aircraft, but the SA-2 guidance system wasn't designed for it either. The missiles tracked downward following his descent. At 1,500 feet altitude, their radar returns started cluttering with ground bounce. At 500 feet, the guidance system struggled to distinguish aircraft from terrain. At 100 feet, the missiles lost lock. 3 smoke trails arced overhead. 2 detonated at altitude on timer fuses, wasted explosions in empty sky. The third missile, its guidance system confused by ground clutter, nosed over and impacted a kilometer ahead. another black smoke column. Boyd's calculation: if he stayed below 100 feet, the SA-2 radar couldn't maintain track. The missiles could still launch. They could still destroy his aircraft through proximity detonation if one got close, but they couldn't guide with precision. He'd just turned the world's most sophisticated surface-to-air missile system into unguided rockets. Laredo 1, photos complete, egressing.
Falcon 3, say position. Boyd's voice, steady on the recording. Falcon 3, low altitude. Continuing cover. The RF-4C pilot. Falcon 3, you're at 80 feet. Recommend climb. Falcon 3, negative. Continuing, present altitude. Because 4 more radars had locked him, and he could see 2 more smoke trails climbing from sites to his north. The flight recorder captured what happened during the next 6 minutes. Tactical analysts at Nellis Air Force Base would later build computer simulations trying to reconstruct Boyd's flight path. The math didn't support what the recorder showed. 1449 hours. 7 SA-2 missiles in flight. Boyd at 80 feet, 460 knots. Fuel state, 580 gallons. The missiles couldn't track him precisely, but their operators could see him visually at that altitude. They could calculate his approximate position and launch missiles into his projected path. Boyd's problem: pure geometry. 7 missiles created overlapping blast zones. Each missile had a 99-meter lethal radius. At 80 feet altitude, he had 0 vertical escape room. If he climbed, the missile's guidance systems would reacquire. If he maintained altitude, the blast patterns would intersect his position. Surface area of threat envelope, approximately 1.4 square kilometers. His solution involved something the SA-2 guidance system couldn't predict: deliberate flight into the missile's blind spots. Each SA-2 had a radar cross-section dead zone directly beneath it during terminal approach. The missile's own body blocked the ground guidance radar's view. This blind zone measured roughly 200 meters in diameter and moved with the missile. Boyd flew into that blind zone repeatedly. He identified missile number 4's trajectory, descending at 35-degree angle from the northeast. He turned toward it, accelerating to 510 knots. The missile's proximity fuse would arm at 200 meters from target. Below that distance, it wouldn't detonate. Safety mechanism to prevent premature warhead triggering. Boyd calculated intercept. He needed to pass within 180 meters of the missile's fuselage. The missile appeared as a white telephone pole, screaming downward at Mach 3. Smoke trail. Flame, growing larger in the canopy. His hand steady on the stick. Slight correction left. The missile passed 150 meters to his right. No detonation. Too close for the proximity fuse. The missile impacted the ground behind him. His thud shook from the blast wave even at 150 meters distance. Shrapnel rang against his tail section.
The mission report states Boyd repeatedly maneuvered into missile blind zones. It doesn't explain how he identified those zones in real time. The SA-2's blind spot wasn't documented in American tactical intelligence until 1968. Some analysts argue Boyd discovered it through observation during this engagement. Others maintain he couldn't have calculated the geometry consciously at 500 miles per hour and 80 feet, that it was trained spatial awareness manifesting under pressure. Soviet tactical documentation, partially declassified in 2003, notes this engagement. The North Vietnamese SAM operators reported target aircraft demonstrating impossible maneuvering and guidance, systems experiencing tracking anomalies at very low altitude. The Soviet analysis concluded either extreme pilot skill or electronic countermeasure not identified in our intelligence. Both assessments were partially correct. Missiles 5 and 6 launched from sites northwest of Hanoi, 4 seconds apart. Staggered salvo, they'd learned to prevent simultaneous approach. Boyd's fuel, 480 gallons, enough for 22 minutes at current consumption rate. Distance to the Thai border, 140 nautical miles. Time required, 18 minutes at 460 knots. The math worked if nothing else went wrong. Missile number 7 launched. This is where Boyd's background in spatial mathematics became survival advantage. 3 missiles inbound, different trajectories, different velocities depending on launch phase. They'd converge on his position within a 12-second window. He couldn't outrun them. The Thud's maximum speed at 80 feet was 552 miles per hour. The SA-2 flew at 2,400 miles per hour at altitude. Even diving toward him, the missiles exceeded his speed by factor of 3. He couldn't outturn them at this altitude. Turn radius at 500 knots and 80 feet, 1.2 miles minimum. Any tighter and ground collision was certain. But he could manipulate their predictive guidance. The SA-2 guidance system led the target. It calculated intercept point based on target speed and heading. The ground radar tracked position, computed velocity vector, transmitted steering commands to the missile. The system assumed the target would maintain approximately steady flight parameters. Boyd didn't maintain steady anything. He flew a zigzag pattern at 80 feet. Hard turn left, 7 seconds. Hard turn right, 5 seconds. Slight climb to 120 feet, then immediate descent to 60 feet. Below doctrinal minimums. Below survivable altitude if anything failed. Each maneuver changed his velocity vector. The SA-2 guidance system could track him, but it couldn't predict him. The missiles kept adjusting, bleeding energy with each correction. Missile 5 approached from his 10 o'clock position, descending. He turned into it. Standard doctrine, but shallower than expected. The missile corrected left, overshooting slightly. At the moment the missile committed to the turn, Boyd reversed. Maximum G turn right. 6 Gs. The thud groaned. Airspeed bled from 480 to 390 knots. The missile tried to follow. Its guidance system commanded maximum deflection, but at Mach 3, the missile's turn radius was measured in miles. Boyd's turn radius at 390 knots and 100 feet, less than 1 mile. The missile passed 400 meters ahead, unable to complete the reversal. Its proximity fuse detonated, shrapnel pattern ahead of his flight path. He flew through the debris field at 390 knots. Metallic impacts. Something punctured the canopy. Wind screamed through a hole 6 inches from his left shoulder. Pressurization lost. His oxygen mask sealed automatically. Temperature in the cockpit dropped. Warning lights. HYD press A low. Hydraulic system alpha showing reduced pressure. Not zero, just low. The thud had 2 independent hydraulic systems. One could fail and you'd still have control, unless both failed. He tested the stick. Response, normal. Whatever got hit wasn't catastrophic yet. Missiles 6 and 7 still tracking. Fuel, 420 gallons, 15 minutes. Then his radar warning receiver went silent. 1452 hours. No radar tracking tones. No missile warnings. 2 possibilities. His receiver died, or the SAM sites stopped tracking him. Boyd checked the circuit breaker panel. ALQ-87 receiver. Circuit closed, power indicator lit. The system was functioning. The SAM sites had lost him, or stopped trying. Documents don't explain why the missile launches stopped. American intelligence analysis suggested the North Vietnamese SAM battalions exhausted their immediate reload capacity. Each site carried 6 missiles ready, with reloads requiring 15 to 20 minutes. Soviet post-war analysis offered a different explanation. SAM operators assessed continued engagement as tactically ineffective, given target altitude and maneuvering pattern. Both could be true. Or neither fully explains the decision. What the declassified mission recorder proves, Boyd remained at 80 to 120 feet for another 4 minutes, zigzagging across the Red River Delta, waiting for the 8th missile launch that never came.
Python lead, Falcon 3. SAM activity ceased. Aggressing present altitude. Falcon 3, recommend climb to cruise altitude. You're burning fuel. Boyd checked his gauges. Fuel, 380 gallons. Distance to border, 95 nautical miles. Time required at 80 feet and high speed, 12 minutes. Fuel required, approximately 360 gallons. 20 gallons margin, 4 minutes reserve. But climbing meant exposing himself to renewed radar coverage, and he'd lost hydraulic pressure in System Alpha. If something failed during climb-out, he'd need altitude for ejection. Falcon 3, climbing. He pulled back on the stick. Rate of climb, 2,000 feet per minute. Airspeed, 380 knots. The thud felt heavy, sluggish. The damaged right wing tank created asymmetric drag. At 5,000 feet, the hydraulic pressure gauge for System Alpha dropped to 0. Complete failure. The stick stiffened, now flying on hydraulic system Bravo only. Falcon 3, hydraulic failure, 1 system remaining. Continuing egress, 10 minutes to the border. He leveled at 8,000 feet. Reduced power. Airspeed, 350 knots. Fuel consumption decreased, but remained critical. The fuel gauge showed 320 gallons. Wind noise from the canopy hole. Cold air. Oxygen flow steady, but the mask uncomfortable against his face after 67 minutes of pressure breathing. His hands hurt. He'd been gripping the stick with tension force for 11 minutes during the SAM evasion. He consciously relaxed his grip, checked the mirrors. No smoke trails. No MiGs reported. Just empty sky and the limestone karst terrain of North Vietnam passing below. The RF-4C was 40 miles ahead, already over water, crossing the Gulf of Tonkin. Mission successful. The photographs would show rail damage patterns, repair rates, future target priorities. Worth the mission, according to the commanders. Boyd crossed the North Vietnamese border at 15:04 hours. Fuel, 240 gallons. Korat RTAFB, 85 nautical miles. He calculated landing fuel, approximately 180 gallons remaining. He reduced power further. Airspeed, 320 knots. Descent rate, 500 feet per minute. Glide ratio optimization, saving every gallon. The Gulf of Tonkin appeared ahead. Blue water. Thai coastline beyond. American Navy destroyers on patrol station. SAR helicopters if he ejected over water, but he wouldn't need them. Korat Tower cleared him straight-in approach. Emergency equipment standing by. Fire trucks, ambulances, the crash recovery team. Landing checklist. Gear down. 3 green lights. Flaps. He tested the flap lever carefully. With only one hydraulic system, asymmetric flap deployment could roll the aircraft uncontrollably at low speed.
Flaps deployed normally, 15 degrees. The thud slowed. Fuel, 190 gallons. More than calculated. The descent had been efficient. Final approach speed, 185 knots. Higher than normal. The damaged wing created uncertain lift characteristics. Better fast than stalled. Runway threshold. He flared. The thud settled onto the concrete. Main gear chirping. Nose gear following. Drag chute deployed. White canopy blossoming behind the tail. He rolled out. Made the first taxiway turnoff. Stopped. 15-17 hours. Engine shut down. Canopy open. Hot Thai air replaced the cold stratospheric wind that had screamed through the cockpit hole for 30 minutes. Boyd unstrapped, climbed down the ladder. His legs shook slightly. Adrenaline aftermath and physical fatigue from sustained G-loading. The maintenance crew arrived before he reached the ground. Technical Sergeant Alan Kramer, crew chief, walked the aircraft perimeter, counting damage. Kramer's official damage report. Declassified. 23 shrapnel impacts, right wing and tail section. Canopy penetration. 6-inch hole, frame 42. Right external fuel tank. Multiple penetrations. Total loss. Hydraulic system alpha, severed line. System B intact. Various minor damage to antennae and sensors. Captain, how many missiles? Boyd's response, recorded in the maintenance log, 7. Kramer looked at the aircraft, then at Boyd. You're telling me 7 SA-2s and you got back with hydraulics? 1 hydraulic system. The debriefing happened immediately. Intelligence officer, operations officer, wing commander. They wanted details while memory remained fresh. Boyd described the engagement sequence. Times, altitudes, evasive maneuvers. They interrupted frequently, asking for clarification. Captain Boyd, you stated you descended to 80 feet, correct, while evading missiles. Correct. That's below minimum safe altitude for the F-105 at combat speed. Yes, sir. And you remained at that altitude for approximately 11 minutes. Approximately. The operations officer reviewed his notes. Captain, doctrine from multiple SAM engagement calls for altitude advantage and high-speed maneuvering. You descended into ground effect and reduced speed. Can you explain the tactical reasoning? Boyd's answer, from the declassified transcript, the guidance systems couldn't track cleanly at that altitude. Ground clutter interfered with radar lock. I assessed this provided better survival probability than vertical escape, given the number of missiles and launch sequence timing.
The operations officer, how did you determine the SA-2 had tracking difficulties at low altitude? Boyd. Observation. The missiles weren't maneuvering with precision below 500 feet. During the engagement? Yes, sir. You calculated this in real time. Boyd paused. It wasn't calculation. It was recognition. The intelligence officer made a note. Captain, we need to classify this engagement report. Sir, the tactics you employed aren't in our manual. The SA-2 low-altitude vulnerability isn't confirmed in intelligence assessments. If this information reaches adversary analysis, they'll modify their engagement protocols. Boyd nodded. Understood. Additionally, we need to analyze your flight recorder data. The maneuvering parameters you described approach structural limits for the aircraft. Engineering needs to verify. The mission report received secret classification on December 3, 1967. It stayed classified until March 1999, 32 years. Why it was classified? Multiple factors documented in declassification review. First, official operational security reason. Boyd's low-altitude evasion tactics demonstrated exploitable vulnerability in SA-2 guidance system. Air Force wanted time to train other pilots in the technique before North Vietnamese and Soviet advisors developed countermeasures. Boyd nodded. Understood. Additionally, we need to analyze your flight recorder data. The maneuvering parameters you described approach structural limits for the aircraft. Engineering needs to verify. The mission report received secret classification on December 3, 1967. It stayed classified until March 1999, 32 years. Why it was classified? Multiple factors documented in declassification review. First, official operational security reason. Boyd's low-altitude evasion tactics demonstrated exploitable vulnerability in SA-2 guidance system. Air Force wanted time to train other pilots in the technique before North Vietnamese and Soviet advisors developed countermeasures. Second, aircraft performance implications. Boyd's maneuvering exceeded published F-105 structural limits in sustained flight. Engineering analysis concluded the aircraft should have experienced structural failure during several recorded maneuvers. Documents note, results suggest current airframe stress calculations may be conservative. The Air Force didn't want foreign intelligence services knowing the THUD could perform beyond its stated capabilities. Third, electronic warfare considerations. Boyd's QRC-160 jamming pod showed unexpected effectiveness during portions of the engagement. These specific jamming frequencies and techniques remained classified programs through 1985. A fourth factor appears in partially redacted documents. Soviet documentation from 1968, declassified in 2003, confirms American fighter conducting very low-altitude flight to exploit guidance limitations prompted revised tracking protocols for terminal phase below 200 meters. The adaptation worked both directions. Boyd's innovation forced Soviet counter-innovation. Recognition received. Distinguished Flying Cross, awarded January 1968. Citation mentions extraordinary achievement during aerial flight over hostile territory without specific details. The recommendation letter from Boyd's wing commander described aggressive maneuvering resulting in successful mission completion, safe language that revealed nothing. Boyd flew his remaining 13 missions. Rotated home March 1968. Total combat missions 100. Total aircraft lost 0. Career aftermath. Boyd returned to Nellis Air Force Base as an instructor pilot. He spent 3 years teaching fighter tactics, developing what became the Air Force's Energy-Maneuverability theory, mathematical framework for understanding aircraft performance in combat. His work influenced fighter design for the next 40 years, including the F-15 and F-16 programs. He retired as colonel in 1975, never spoke publicly about the December 2nd engagement during his lifetime. When friends asked about Vietnam, he'd answer technically, flew the THUD, respected its limits, came home. Margaret Boyd, interviewed in 2001 after John's passing, recalled he had nightmares for years. Never violent, just he'd wake up calculating numbers, angles, fuel. He'd sit at the kitchen table at 3 a.m. with his notebooks, rechecking the math from missions flown 20 years before. The mission report declassified in 1999 as part of routine Vietnam War document release. No ceremony, just appeared in National Archives catalog with secret declassified stamp. Aviation historians discovered it in 2001. Fighter weapons school instructors at Nellis requested the flight recorder data for analysis. What they found surprised them. Computer simulation of Boyd's flight path, using modern GPS-level position accuracy extracted from the flight recorder, revealed maneuvering that contemporary analysts considered impossible. The flight path showed sustained 6G turns at airspeeds and altitudes that should have exceeded F-105 structural limits. Retired F-105 test pilot Colonel Richard Graham, interviewed for Air Force magazine in 2004, looking at Boyd's recorder data,
I initially thought the equipment malfunctioned. Those G-loads at that weight and speed? We avoided that in test flying, but the damage pattern on the recovered aircraft matches the stress analysis. He pulled it. The thud survived. We still don't completely understand why. Some aerospace engineers argue Boyd benefited from positive variance in his specific airframe, manufacturing tolerances that produced slightly stronger structural members. Others maintain he instinctively flew at the precise edge of the envelope without exceeding it. The truth likely combines both factors. North Vietnamese air defense records, partially released through Soviet archives in 2003 to 2005, provide the opposing perspective. December 2, 1967, Site 261 northwest of Hanoi and Site 289 northeast of Hanoi engaged single F-105 aircraft over Red River Delta. 7 missiles launched. No confirmed hit. American aircraft escaped. Site Commander Report. Target demonstrated very low altitude flight capability preventing effective guidance. Recommend revised engagement protocols for similar scenarios. The North Vietnamese assessment. Professional, technical, acknowledging the tactical defeat without blame. They'd fought skillfully. Boyd fought more skillfully that day. Opposing archives present competing interpretations. American analysis emphasizes pilot innovation and aircraft durability. Boyd's spatial calculation ability combined with F-105 structural resilience created survival margin. Soviet analysis emphasizes guidance system limitations at low altitude. SA-2 radar tracking below 200 meters remains problematic against maneuvering targets. System upgrades required. Both perspectives accurate. Combat outcomes emerge from complex interaction of human skill, machine capability, and adversary limitations. Delayed recognition. In 2002, the Air Force added detailed case study of Boyd's engagement to fighter weapons school curriculum. His low-altitude evasion technique, now called terrain masking with active maneuvering, became standard doctrine for surface-to-air missile defense. Boyd received no additional awards. He passed away in 1997, age 62, from cancer. Margaret Boyd attended the Fighter Weapons School presentation in 2003, where instructors analyzed her husband's December 2nd flight path. She told the assembled pilots, "John would have explained it mathematically. He saw combat as physics problems solved at 500 miles per hour. He survived because he could calculate faster than the missiles could adjust. That's all he'd say. Nothing about courage, just math." Physical artifacts. F-105D tail number 610217 scrapped in 1970. No museum preservation. Too many thuds returned with battle damage for individual aircraft preservation. Fragments may exist in private collections, unverified. Boyd's flight suit, helmet, and personal effects donated to National Museum of the UASF in 2004. Not on display. Storage collection, but preserved. Tactical lessons studied globally. Boyd's engagement appears in Russian aerospace journals in 2008, Chinese air defense analysis in 2011, and Israeli fighter tactics documentation, date classified. The physics transcend politics. Skill is skill. The full truth of Boyd's thought process during those 11 minutes remains inaccessible. We have recorder data, objective physics. We have his debriefing testimony, selective reconstruction. We have mathematical analysis, retrospective calculation. But the subjective experience, what Boyd saw, felt, intuited in the moment, that knowledge was lost. Did he consciously calculate the SA-2 guidance blind spot? Or did his spatial awareness recognize a pattern his conscious mind couldn't articulate? Final ambiguity. Engineering analysis of F-105 number 610217's damaged hydraulic system revealed something unexplained. The severed line in System Alpha should have drained completely in 2 to 3 minutes. Boyd flew 28 minutes after the damage occurred. Investigators found evidence of partial line closure, possibly from shrapnel creating a self-limiting leak, or possibly from something else. The investigation concluded hydraulic system remained functional longer than expected given observed damage. Mechanism unclear. Some engineers call it luck. Others call it unexplained physics. Boyd would call it margin. 7 missiles, 11 minutes.
One pilot who treated combat as geometry homework while traveling 500 miles per hour at 80 feet. The documents tell us what happened. The recorder proves how he maneuvered. The Soviet archives confirm the launches. But they don't tell us what Boyd thought when he saw that 7th smoke trail climbing. They don't explain how he maintained precise control through 6G turns while calculating fuel, tracking multiple threats, and managing hydraulic failure. The mission report states, pilot demonstrated exceptional airmanship during sustained enemy engagement. Bureaucratic language for something we still don't fully comprehend. Boyd's final quote about the engagement, from a 1994 interview with Nellis AFB historians, 2 years before classification lifted, people ask if I was scared. Wrong question. Fear uses mental bandwidth. I didn't have bandwidth available. Every neuron focused on angles, closure rates, energy states. Fear is a luxury. I couldn't afford it at 80 feet. Then he added something the interviewer noted specifically. The missiles weren't trying to eliminate me personally. They were solving the same physics problem I was solving. They just solved it slower. That's the only difference between survival and loss. Solution speed. Was it training that gave Boyd solution speed? Was it natural ability? Was it the specific pressure of that moment creating cognitive clarity we can't replicate? The declassified documents leave this question open. Viewers debate in the comments. What would your calculation be at 80 feet with 7 inbound missiles? If this story of tactical innovation under pressure resonates, consider subscribing. The algorithm prioritizes channels that surface worthy but obscure military history. Every subscription helps recover these documented accounts from the archives. John Boyd solved an impossible physics problem at 552 miles per hour. The least we can do is remember he did it.